Alright, so let's discuss Bitcoin. One of the key aspects of Bitcoin is what is it and what are the different currencies available on Poloniex, or Poloniex I call it. One thing I've noted since the beginning of Poloniex is they have a ton of currencies. They have Bitcoin, Ethereum, Dash, Monroe, Litecoin, Ripple, even Stellar Lumens, and Next. What are all these currencies? Uh, the key to noting about currencies is that it's a different development team and a different set of currencies per team, and each team comes up with their own code that supports that coin. So, what Bitcoin is it was created by Satoshi Nakamoto right after the financial crash in 2008. He wrote a white paper and developed out the currency, and initially it was really easy to mine. But it was only worth like $1 or $2 per Bitcoin. Now it's come up to $5,678 as of today, and it's become much harder to mine and process all the ledger data and to keep the network going. So one of the key factors between all the coins is they're all based on a blockchain, and a blockchain is a kind of a system where all transactions are hashed, meaning that they're all added together and they're stored as a numerical value that's unique. So if any of the previous transactions are changed, the hash will completely change. And each hash is linked to the other hash, creating a chain. So you create a blocked chain of hashes, or also known as the blockchain. All the currencies are operating on a blockchain methodology, but each has a different quantity that they produce and a different mining strategy. So, Bitcoin has a total cap of 21 million Bitcoins that can ever be produced, and that'll happen around 2048, where the total of Bitcoins will be reached, and then all the excess mining goes into all the transaction costs. And currently, the market does about the revenue from transactions is about $200,000 a day, so that the miners, in addition to getting their fees right now, will get the transaction fees spread across the miners based on how much hashing power is produced by each miner. Ethereum's slightly different. What Ethereum does is it's a contract-based currency, meaning that they have smart contracts built in. You buy Ethereum and you use that as fuel for the contract. Say you wanted a smart contract that says if the price of oil goes above $50, I'll get a dividend of 10 Ethereum per day. If the oil price is below $50, I won't receive any Ethereum. Suppose that was a deal someone made. And they paid 10,000 Ethereum to build the deal up. So they paid the 10,000 Ethereum, and each day they would receive their required Ethereum if the price of oil hit $50 or not. That's a smart contract. It's automated, and it links to the way a person wants to transact. So trust isn't required. The contract is secured by the network. And that's one really cool part about Ethereum. Other currencies, for instance, Litecoin, are a mirror of Bitcoin, except Litecoin is a lot faster. They adopt newer technologies, and the risk of that is, what if the technology fails, then the coin could collapse. While Bitcoin is very stable, they don't change the code often, and if they do change the code, they hard fork it, meaning that a new coin is created. And in this case, the new coin that was created recently is Bitcoin Cash. And the reason they created Bitcoin Cash is that some of the mining people disagreed with the way that Bitcoin was run, and they wanted their mining power to go towards an alternate coin using the same hashing strategy. So they copied the entire ledger, and they said, okay, so everyone who has Bitcoin now has an equal Bitcoin Cash quantity as of a certain day of release, which would happen a couple months back. But on that day, everyone who held Bitcoin got an equal quantity of Bitcoin Cash. And one of the cool things that happened on Poloniex Polonox is that for every person who lends Bitcoin, the lender gets an interest rate, but the person who's borrowing it gets the Bitcoin cash. So I was lending Bitcoin at interest rates between 3% to 5% on daily return. And at that price, I think I made around, for one Bitcoin that I was lending, I made roughly $300 to $600, somewhere in the middle, for 2 days.
Which is about how much?
Which is about what Bitcoin Cash is worth. So if I didn't want the Bitcoin Cash, I lent it out at a very high interest rate, got Bitcoins, and then someone else got the Bitcoin Cash. I got a small amount of Bitcoin Cash because I had a few Bitcoin lying around, and that I sold off into the market.
And this is because they did the hard fork as a response to keeping the technology that was made with the ability to hash.
Right.
I guess to truncate the hash.
Right. So, what Bitcoin was doing at that time before the fork was they wanted to get rid of some of the miners that were using a technique called ASIC boost. And the way it worked is that to be first in the line to be a miner and perform the hashing function, you can cheat the system by removing some of the data in the hash, meaning that I wanted to truncate the header file for the information that goes into the Bitcoin through every transaction. So when you send a transaction, you send a header file, and they dropped the header file and then did the transaction just based on the quantity, and they hashed it and then provided the network the hash number, which is accurate, but it basically circumvents what Bitcoin's data stream is, and it speeds up your processing. So what they did was Bitcoin Cash allows for those faster miners to still operate, and the Bitcoin Cash was where the faster miners went, and during that time period, the amount of mining power in Bitcoin decreased, making it easier to mine Bitcoin. So people who were mining got more during that period, but the difficulty rose during the next 2 weeks after that, and it caught up with Bitcoin. So you may have made a few more Bitcoin if you were mining during that period. So the other currencies are specifically Ethereum and Ethereum Classic had the same issue. So Ethereum Classic split off from Ethereum because someone found a hack in Ethereum where if you bought a certain quantity, you could essentially steal from the network $50 million worth of Ethereum. And the guy Vitalik Buterin, who invented Ethereum, basically said, let's hard fork and get the money back into the hands of the folks that originally deserved the Bitcoin, or the Ethereum coin, not Bitcoin, Ethereum. And in Ethereum, they split off, gave Ethereum Classic to the guys that basically stole the money, and kept the original Ethereum, which is now $340, whereas Ethereum Classic is trading at $12, meaning that whoever wanted to maintain the existing Classic lost out because they basically stole money. So if something goes tragically wrong on a Bitcoin or an Ethereum or Ethereum Classic network, they can always hard fork it and restore a previous ledger.
Right.
So that's one of the key aspects of cryptocurrencies. You can go back if needed and split off the currency to restore a mistake that was made in the network.
And that's, anything to mitigate any sort of issues or problems.
Yep. So they can be resolved with code updates, and if the update's significant, it will basically fork the network and create more coins, but stabilize the system so it's viable.
Right. So speaking of forks, we know that upcoming is gonna be Bitcoin Gold.
Right. So there's two big forks coming: Bitcoin Gold and Bitcoin Segwit2. And so the difference between Bitcoin Gold and Segwit2 is Bitcoin Gold is going to go away from ASIC mining. Basically, the algorithm is going to get changed so that whoever receives the Bitcoin Gold, they'll get 1-for-1 from the Bitcoin, will be able to mine it using GPUs and CPUs instead of these specialized miners that are in the terahashes and are impossible to compete against from GPU mining. GPU mining is just your mining that you get through graphics processing, exactly, or CPU processing. So that's gold. Segwit2 is going to do something unique. So Bitcoin is based off a 1 megabyte file that gets sent to all the ledgers of everyone who's verifying all the data through hashing. And that 1 megabit has the 8-minute segment of data that all the transactions occurred in. So if your transactions didn't fit into that 1 8-minute segment, it'd go into the next megabyte from the next segment of 8 minutes. And sometimes if you don't pay the fee, you can spend almost 48 hours to get your money.
Yeah.
So I've
lessons learned, right?
Yeah, I've gone through that where I didn't pay any fee, and I was wondering if my transaction got stuck. It actually just got picked up 2 days later, and I got my funds. So transaction fees are relevant when you're transferring Bitcoin. If you really want to move your Bitcoin, it's a good idea to give a decent fee. Usually 50 cents to $1 gets you a fast transaction rate within any span from 8 minutes to 4 hours.
And so are these hard forks just going to be based off of the community and how much support it gets and how many people are backing that sort of currency?
Exactly. So Bitcoin Segwit2, they're going to increase the data stream to take 2 megabytes worth of data across the network. So everyone receives a 2 megabit file on the Bitcoin Segwit coin. And what that'll do is more data can be put into the individual transaction per 8 minutes, meaning more transactions can take place. The cost of Bitcoin transactions will come down, and so the Segwit2 coin will have a competitive advantage in that they no longer require that 1 megabit limit to process data, meaning that the network will have to support more data, but it'll be much faster. So I think that wraps it up for some of the different coins. We'll discuss more coins in the future, but I think that gives you an idea of what the Bitcoin exchange is and kind of what are all these different coins and why are they priced so differently and why are the quantities so different. So until the next video, let's take a